All right, I think we're live. What's up, everybody?
Welcome to Decentral Lens, where lifelong friends Blutoshi and Disco navigate the ever-evolving crypto landscape. With nuance as our North Star, our goal is to empower listeners with the insights to learn and to prosper.
All right, final week in March. Here we are. Me and Disco have had, I would say, long extended breaks. We've been out of the action, which is always good to touch grass. Disco, welcome back. After I recorded with Brennan last week, that was a super fun show, and he's always super enlightening while you were down in South America. How you feeling?
I'm feeling great. I will say, like, it was really cool listening to that show and just, you know, I actually probably need to go back and re-listen and take notes because Brennan's just on a different level in terms of some of the things he drops just casually that he's like fully in the loop on. So that was really a interesting show to watch, and it's nice to kind of, you know, it's hard to get away because you get so into it. I remember, like, the day I left, we were like live scrolling the OMB art and getting into all that. And then it's like, I gotta go get on a plane. And then, and you go and you kind of unplug and you come back and it's like, it's a little different, but it's also kind of the same. So it kind of gets you into this perspective mode of, like, you know, you think everything's uber important and critical, and then you kind of take a step back and you come back and you're like, you know what, I can jump back in and I didn't really miss that much. It was weird for me. It was like, you know, Bitcoin, when I got on the plane, was probably closer to 71, 72. And then I got off and it was down in the 60s, and it's like, oh, a dip, you know, and everything. And, you know, a week later, it's sitting right back up where it was. So I guess the moral of my little story is, you know, don't be afraid to go away, because, you know, there's always going to be new stuff to get into, and, you know, don't force it. Sometimes it's good to step back, and it's not as urgent and critical as you necessarily think it is at the time.
Yeah, and there's a calm before the storm right here too. I mean, before the halving, I just, there's been so many drops and mints this year. I'm not sure when OMB started, but that kind of kicked off everything with Ordinals. I think the buzz was already coming, but, you know, now we've got we had no monks. Sorry, I meant no monks. And now we've, you know, we just had OMB before you left, and then I was out of town last week, so you and I haven't connected in 2 weeks. You know, and now we got inked. So I feel like there's a bunch of stuff minting now, but it does feel like it's slowing down, and everyone's attention is on runes, and, you know, everyone wants to get like generationally rich, and, you know, a lot of people are spreading their bets out on different ones, but you know, we're basing it on Doge and on maybe Shiba Inu with these $20 billion market caps, and then, you know, all these Solana tokens, and you know, the thinking is Runestone or RSIC or who knows which one, tokens 0 through 9 is going to make everyone Jenny wealth. And I don't know, is it? We'll see.
I know. It's almost like, it's coming up to the point of like, okay, you know, everybody really got wound up on the potential and the opportunity. And now it's not to say like Judgment Day, but it's coming up to kind of see, okay, was this, you know, an ideal that we thought that we, you know, bought into and wanted to have happen and manifest, or is there really, you know, a huge opportunity? And, you know, I could go both ways, because I do think that with a lot of smart folks understanding that we're opening up a new opportunity within, you know, the, as you say, like the mother chain, right? So we haven't seen that before. So there are points in time where, you know, there's fundamental shifts and changes in terms of opportunities and the way new protocols can develop. So I'm bullish on that side of it, but there is always a little bit of like, I don't know. We'll have to see how it plays out. So let's just lean into it being an exciting pre-period. You know, we kind of had that with the last thing that was kind of like it was the merge when Ethereum went through that, and there was all these questions and people had merge watch parties and everything. And then it was kind of like, yeah, kind of like Y2K, you know, it was like, yeah, we're still going, you know, like the colors didn't change, the world didn't totally shift, and we made it through. So, but it is kind of hard to take your mind off of the word, what, like 24 days. And then also the whole 420 thing is just so you almost wonder, you know, how could it happen to be that ironic that we're looking at it potentially hitting on 420?
Is it solidly in 420 right now? Because I mean, a lot of these blocks, you know, the more the more transactions that have to get pushed through, and the some of these blocks have been 30, 40, 50 minutes. So that could theoretically push it to 421, 422, or it could be 419. But it sounds like 420 is the guesstimated target date now, which, I mean, how do you write a script better than that in this industry? It's I don't know. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, coming back, it's sometimes you unplug so much, you're just like, God, is this all just, as Brendan said last week, is this all just based on complete Ponzonomics? And the answer may be yes, and are we all playing against each other? And the one thing that always is nagging at the back of my mind is, with influencers and them getting together in these groups, and these people with huge followings can really turn waves of people to, get them to feel like they're missing out and get in on stuff. And I think when you go unplug fully for a week plus, you kind of wash that all entirely clean. You're like, I'm going to get what I want to get, and the rest doesn't matter. But as you get back in, you're like, well, I don't want to miss out on this. The halvings every 4 years. Obviously, with this one, it's special in a couple ways on Bitcoin because you've got runes. Obviously, that protocol doesn't kick in till block 840K01, I think. But you've also got people, I assume, fighting for that epic sat, which is, the first sat in a halving, which this is going to be the fourth one. There's none other in circulation as far as we know. I'm sure big whale wallets hold these things, but so there's going to be a lot of stories and people etching runes, and the fees are just going to be astronomical.
Well, the other thing that I kind of think about that's related to that is, so you have this runway or this run up to the halving. So it almost is like the entire space is giving Ordinals and Bitcoin like the share of voice, or the ODM to a degree, for the entire space is on that.
Right.
But then aren't you kind of starting to, because I'm kind of starting to see like people carving out what the next kind of big narrative may be. And, you kind of wonder where it's going to shift to. There was a thought for a while before, when the ETH ETF had a higher percent chance of getting approved, that like at that point, maybe that would get, a little bit of a shift in the narrative. And now I'm just starting to see a lot more people, more influencers and stuff start talking about base. And it kind of feels like, is that kind of waiting to drift and kind of become more of a narrative post halving? And then I just get into more of a conspiratorial thought process of like, who is putting together like these release dates? And okay, well, you guys just wait, because, after April 20th in May, it's going all this, or it's going to go all that. And, our timelines will be impacted by, whatever the predominant narrative of the time is. So I think that maybe it's like we're kind of going to clear the cache a little bit on the whole rune side of it. And then we know from being in the space, even as short a period as I have, that something else is going to take over the whole, kind of top down narrative. And it's curious what that'll be.
Yeah. I mean, like you mentioned base and Brennan, there's a lot of education there just on which layer 2s on the Ethereum side would roll down and be validated and use ETH as the main token. Yeah. And it sounds like most of the OP stuff base is, but a lot of them are not. So it sounds like base is growing quite a following there. On layer 2, a lot of this stuff is still centralized, but it sounds like Coinbase, I mean, remember they tried to launch an NFT market. That was a complete flop. They literally pulled it, I think, within literally 3 or 4 days because people were masking as other people. But base obviously has a lot of legs right now. My focus isn't over on the ETH side right now, but it does feel like this pre-halving, Inc. was really the last one on the Bitcoin side to have a big launch. I think Hardo Vivid has another from Medusa, has another mint. So they're still happening, but it feels a little tired in the end of the cycle. And again, I think everyone's waiting like, do I hold my R6? Do I hold my Runestone? Or do I cash those in now and make the money off the pre-mine, or, because nobody wants to, my thought process is like, I got airdrop these things. I think I did buy one more runestone on that first day for like 0.2. I know you got one at a really good time at like 0.015, which is great. And what's it at 0.3 or point? I think it's up to 0.45 again, 0.45. Yeah. So I think a lot of us are just like, well, if this does turn into the meme coin, I don't want to be the jackass who sold early. But then again, like, if you cash in and it goes up a little and you might have made a little more, you don't really care. But if it just goes up and one becomes the quintessential meme for this entire kind of epoch that we're in of going into this halving with ordinals being just over a year old, then, we would obviously probably, I try and live life with zero regrets, but that one, you might hold a little wound and have to nurse that thing for a little while if something just ran stupid big, like a couple billions, and you're like, oh man, that was probably 100, 50,000 per RSIC or whatever. I haven't done the math in a while, but so I'm holding, but there's definitely what's that? Say it again.
People definitely have done the math and are doing the math, on the all the time, just kind of updating it, because, it really could be if, as you say, like missing that boat would be terrible if you were already on it. So, you definitely have that kind of factor of not wanting to kind of walk away at the wrong time, which is, the truth in all of this stuff. But, I don't know what's coming next in terms of what's going to be the big, thing that's going to take over the mind share, but there will be something for sure. And it just feels a little laggy right now, but that's kind of normal before a big event. So I think if you just kind of zoom back and look at that, I think that, I'm interested in Inc. I'm watching it. I wasn't involved in it early, but it seems like they really did a pretty admirable job in terms of the rollout of that. And it seemed, I don't like that you can't see it yet. I don't like the non-reveal part of it, because I've gotten addicted to, or not addicted, but I've gotten used to the instant gratification. But maybe the buildup works. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I love Inked, and I love that they did the price for 0.0058. So hats off to them. And their whole motto was what, like, for the people or whatever, Inked for the people. I think they handled it really well. I mean, I did the math yesterday. It was 58 Bitcoin that they took in at 0.0058 mint price, and they gave the public the same as everybody else. And 58 Bitcoin is $4 million, which is no small haul, but that's like, I mean, especially in this space of grift, like, I don't know, hats off to Inked. It's definitely, if you had to draw parallels, it definitely feels like, we've gotten a teaser of the art. There's like shadow ones, and there's a lot of clean lines and stuff like that. It definitely harkens to Azuki, right? And I know they gave Spirit DAO all allow lists, and I think a lot of Ethereum groups got allow lists. So it's just interesting, like, the Bored Apes and the Mutant Apes, I think, really went heavily, and some CryptoPunks went heavily to Node Monks. But now with Inked, it's bringing over kind of the other, I want to say faction, because there's some crossover there, but it brings over kind of the anime crowd with Azuki. And, this one, as we go into the halving, it'll be interesting. Can the halving with all the runes and craziness sustain, or will Solana obviously gets its own attention doing, it's almost like there's a lot of people who live both parallel in Bitcoin and Ethereum, or Bitcoin and Solana, or Ethereum and Solana. But I feel like those kind of run parallel. And, a lot of people I think are probably making and losing a lot of money on some of these coins and throwing money. I think last week we discovered that 150 million went to literally just private addresses. Most of them were scams for like pre-sale tokens. So again, it's this all over again, this complete scam, right? There's honest people in there, and then there's complete grifters, which I got no room for.
Well, I think that also it's kind of, I don't want it to be a melancholic take or anything, but you kind of,
Let's be honest,
but we're going to be
right?
honest, we're going to be honest. Right. And if we've talked before about time capsules of the shows and kind of capturing a moment in time, and there just somewhat feels and I wasn't, OG on the Ordinal side as much as Blutoshi or anything, but I was aware of it and everything. And I spoke with you about it throughout, and you were very kind of joyous about it, right? Like you were like, oh, and this, it
Yeah.
was almost like childlike wonderment, beginner's mind, and you had all that. And then it almost feels as if it got to the point of mainstreamification within a niche still, to the point that then, okay, the opportunists and the grifts start, kind of infiltrating. And, that's a little bit disheartening from the spirit of these things. But it happens, it's part of this, development in the space overall, but it is something where it just kind of feels like, oh man, really? So we got to the point where these other people, the opportunists, figured it out, and they're going to come in and start kind of tweaking with what was kind of so fun about that initial discovery of the playground, where you could jump the tire swing and do all
Oh
this. And it
yeah.
was like a whole new, oh, we're exploring this, but wait, you don't understand, because you
No.
can also do this. But where the attention goes and where the money flows, then so comes the opportunist, and that's just a little bit disheartening, I suppose, would be my
Yeah,
articulate.
yeah, that's very well articulated. The amount of grift coming in, and also with the influencer set, like seeing how much impact they have on this space. Like I've got some runestones. I didn't sell them, but just the that group has had a lot of kind of outsized influence, I feel like, on the space, and has a ton of followers. And you definitely earn your followers, but some of these people have kind of seedier track records, if you will, and more grifty, like pumping things. Like it's the same formula. It's just,
Yeah.
it to me, it's always bummed me out that it's been on Ordinals, but I guess it's naive to think that it wouldn't. But you made an interesting point about how pure it was at the beginning. Yeah, I was a kid in a candy store because I felt like I was coming back to the mother chain, back to Bitcoin. And it's not like Ordinals was like shoehorned to work with the system. I mean, I guess it was made to fit, but it was kind of a cool solution that behaved entirely different than the Ethereum side. It was all on chain, and
Yeah.
the people in it was really exciting. There was like a hot flash for like 3 months, and then it kind of cooled all summer long, and then it didn't really kick up again until Node Monks in the fall. So it was kind of fun, and that's when I went back to look at Chaos Roads and Terraforms and stuff like that, and the East Side really got into the on-chain art. And you and I started this show last fall, right? So a lot
Yeah.
of kind of cool things happen. But then I think once Node Monks come, and slightly after, when then the floodgates just open. But there's a bigger picture here with Bitcoin going mainstream. Like, I think part of me, just coming from, like, it was almost like I always felt like we were fighting the good fight, and Gary Gensler doesn't get it. Like, it's so easy to make enemies of people in government and who don't understand this stuff. But at some point, when an ETF comes out, obviously we are at the beginning, the literal beginnings of crossing that chasm into the mainstream. And everybody listening to this show and everyone who follows us and who we follow, obviously we're early to Ordinals and to the digital art space. We're super early. I think we're gonna look back in 30 years, and I think this era, I think it will be celebrated 100%. But I think I'm getting, our pre-show, I was all not doom and gloom to you. I'm just like, you come back from touching grass and just having fun, hanging out with the family and doing other things and playing a lot of guitar again. You just don't care as much. But I think part of it is that greater fatigue of, like, at one
Yes.
point, not that I would even put myself in the same sentence as Trace Mayer or Andreas or some of these early guys, or even Brennan, but at some point, at what point do you say, like, you know what, I see it, whatever good or bad, it's getting mainstream adoption. That was always my goal. Not that I've been an advocate for so long, but at some point it's like, what role do I play, or do I need to play a role? Do I just need to take a step back and you and I have our conversations either here live or on the side, because a lot of the things that we wanted are here.
Yeah. But I think that I would challenge that, because I think that there's many things, like, I told you this a while ago, but like one of the smartest people I know, told their kid was like, I'm bored. And she was parenting him, and she's just like, boredom's a choice. And I think that it just, when you feel fatigue on something, yet there's so many opportunities within this, I think it's more imperative for you to just kind of look at yourself and do an internal pivot onto your focus. So maybe that, maybe kind of the stuff that has led to the fatigue is not necessarily bearing enough fruit to merit like continued going down that same path. But I think that this space offers so many different things to get interested in. I certainly had that in the very beginning. So I came in and I was like, okay, how do I fit in? This whole thing's been rolling, but I want to tie into things that I understand or know. So I wasted, frankly, a lot of time trying to learn about like music NFTs and collecting music NFTs. And I thought like, oh, this is going to really go. And then it
But
didn't,
that was your but that was your passion too. I mean, and
it was and
cut your
is
teeth, right?
right. But it was and is, but the product wasn't there. Like the promise of what they could represent wasn't being fulfilled, and it didn't get, traction to the point that I think it deserved to. And lo and behold, then I started getting into other things that then just take your mind and get you excited. Like there's just so many different channels kind of to tune into that it's almost like, well, lose some of those presets and, check out a new genre of music, because there's all these different things to focus into. I think that Brennan, you talk about a multi-cycler. I think that he's one of the best at that. And I don't know him super well, but just kind of being a part of conversations, like he seems to have an insatiable appetite to find new things to kind of dig into and to explore. And I think that we're looking at this right now, like what's next? Like we really got into, the looking into the R6 and having that kind of capture our imagination. And now we're kind of waiting to see that play out. But like, what's the next frontier that's really going to be exciting? Is it the regulation, like trying to get involved on that bigger fight and getting involved with that side of it? Or is it time to become creative and really start tinkering more and playing within the opportunities there? So I think that there's just different, I think you just hit different paths, and at some point it kind of naturally evolves and it makes sense. One note I wanted to bring up, which I thought was pretty fascinating. We did our first show we uploaded our first show on September 24th. What was Bitcoin's price then? Give it a guess.
September 24th. I know we just kept talking about, you're like, is it, I don't even think things have heated up. So we knew we were still in the bear. I'm going to go 21.4.
You were a little more bearish than it was at that point, because it was at 26,579.
So it had already started to make its run. Okay. I was even going to go 19, but that must have been a couple months before, because I think the low of the last, like of 23, was probably a couple months before 19. I don't know. So it was 26. And I know Solana and Bitcoin kind of were the first to make the run. I know Solana that fall finally, I mean, I hate to say it, but you and I were like, I know you already had some tied up with all that other stuff that turned out to be a happy ending. But I was like, I'm getting some, like, and I rode it from 70 to whatever 180 or 190, so I've doubled. And I didn't buy a ton, but ETH kept crabbing. We're like, what's going on here? And I kept forcing myself to think about like, why I don't like Solana, but why does everyone like it? And I finally realized, like, gas fees, like, just because I'm more probably stupidly immune to them, I want a chain that's more decentralized and doesn't go down and trustless. But a lot of people wanted that cheaper transaction speed because they're newer and their money is fresher. And if you have $88 gas fees, like, my brother just reached out to me, and I guess one of the best VPN services you actually get through ETH. And he's like, oh, I got some, my brother told me to grab ETH. So he was going to sign up for it. And the gas fees were like $84. He's like, what the hell is this? I was like, oh, and this was recent. And, I can't remember the name of it because I want to use that one. I'm going to stop using Nord or whichever one I'm using now, because it sounds like a lot of these have kind of been co-opted. But it just, again, goes to show why Solana made its run. And what Brendan said last week, what was it on that Cosmos chain? What was the one it was called? I know he said Chia, but there was another one that he
Yeah, I
said
gotta look.
was yeah. So we don't want to rehash and recycle too much, but it sounds like there's a lot going on to take from Ethereum and Solana and a lot of these chains. It sounds like he's saying the battle hasn't even yet started to kind of go for the dominance on the cheaper quick transactions with the EVMs and stuff like that.
Yeah, and the narrative from the Ethereum kind of camp or influencers is really kind of, in my mind, kind of focused on just saying, well, you guys can do what you're doing. Ethereum's going to be the settlement layer, and they're kind of using that as their anchor in it. And I can certainly relate to the Solana upside because as I say, back when I was starting and doing music NFTs, it just boggled my mind that I would have to pay more in gas than what the NFT price was. So that just kind of slowed down the momentum. It's like, oh, I'm going to buy this, cool one for this song,
Right.
but I'm going to pay 3x in gas and get nothing out of it. So it did really kind of mess with the equation. So I'm happy for Solana and their success. And I think that there's many different, I just think in the future, there's many opportunities for many different chains to be, serve different audiences. So I've always kind of had a little bit of a soft spot for that one.
Yeah. And if you just look at like CryptoSlam's a great site, but if you just look at like NFT volume, Bitcoin is still on top. This is 30-day. We can go to 7-day, and so Bitcoin stays on top, but it's pretty consistent. Like it's just above Ethereum. But my only point is like those are both double Solana, and then you start to get into the others and BNB and layer 2s and stuff, immutable. But it just goes to show that Ethereum, there's still a ton of activity there just because we're not on it. I guess what scared me the most from last week on what Brendan said is I thought way more rolled into Ethereum security as the base, but using your own token like Matic and stuff like that, knowing that a lot of these are just multi-sigs and are still not fairly, they are centralized. Like, I have more respect for Base now, because they do roll up to Ethereum, but it makes me realize like we should probably look into what rolls into Ethereum, because if I'm going to run a bunch of validators, like, you certainly want to be heaviest in Bitcoin, but that doesn't mean I'm going to throw everything there. But he made a very good point. And like, what's that exchange ratio? Like if you think of Bitcoin as the new cash, you're not even thinking about cash anymore. You're looking at the ratio, that 0.052 of Bitcoin to Ethereum. And obviously he's probably not looking at Solana, and you're looking at Bitcoin to other chains. If you think a chain's going to make a run versus Bitcoin as your base, and I'm 9 years in and I do it more and more now, but I'm still looking at the price of Bitcoin. So that shows how long it takes to get that mindset that Brennan has, that, Bitcoin is the fundamental currency that everything should be based off, including starting a business or buying land or anything.
Yeah, it's a lot. And then thinking about, I just think there's some interest in just the construct of the inherent biases that every different cycler has. You know what I mean? So you will look at Bitcoin way differently than I look at Bitcoin, and Brandon will look at it way differently than you look at it. So
For
it's
sure.
just, it's almost like, I mean, everything kind of goes back to high school to a degree, which is one of those things you kind of learn as you age. It's like, well, it was kind of it's kind of what it's all about. Like you can always make those parallels, and
Is it
you
high
know, you
school
can't.
or is it junior high?
Yeah, precisely. I don't know if you want to say you want to, the lovely middle school years or what it is, but you're coming in, you don't want to get shoved into the locker as the new guy, right? And then you have kind of the seniors who are, kind of checked out and, end of days and confused, saying their goodbyes to their friends, thinking about where they're going next and, where you're kind of at. So I just think that it's really an interesting thing just to kind of, it's almost like you look at people's takes and their perspectives, and then you look at when they joined crypto Twitter, and you can kind of get a better understanding of their basis of kind of where their feet are locked in and why. So the Solana camp, you completely would probably see a class of XYZ 21 or 22, whatever it is, right? As opposed to, well, I just look at everything purely in terms of Bitcoin. Well, yeah, if you're a class of 2010 through 2018, like that makes more sense.
Yeah, that's well put. I guess I never thought about it in those terms, but yeah, everyone's got their different takes, and you just keep going, and everyone has their different burnout factors. But some people are probably better traders than others too. Like I realize, like I'm a buy and hold person, but that doesn't always work either. And my timing sometimes is good, but I think if you follow your instincts, you don't spend more than you have and start leveraging and stuff like that. But some people are really good at the trading, but I think as we get older, like I want to buy things that I'm not going to regret getting anyway.
Yeah. I changed my handle on Twitter to Disco Hodl because I realized, like, dude, I hold. Like that's what I do.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna lie on that. I own it. But I think that there's one story in the past 48 hours that, regardless of your allegiances or your background, if you own any crypto or any assets, I think you're kind of celebrating the fact that SBF had to take his medicine and got sent away for 25 years. And I know some speculated that it would be longer or this or that, but at the end of the day, when it was all going on, and you go back and look at the videos and kind of the way he presented himself as such a intelligent genius, and blah blah blah, it kind of probably had to make everyone feel pretty good to see him get the judge to say, hey, you're going away for this for a while.
Yeah, I maybe I'm in the minority. I thought he would get more. I think a lot of people pleaded for him, and that's when not to sidetrack too much, but I just watched that Nickelodeon special, and that guy who got completely abused by these onset, just complete predators. And the thing that struck out to me was, obviously he was in the right. It was proven. I think the guy said no contest, like I'm guilty. And when it came for time for sentencing, this complete predator who's been doing this in Hollywood for 20 plus years had a full gallery behind him. It's like the wedding where you're on one side. He said, the actor, I won't ruin it for anybody, who said he was abused, had his brother and his mom. The other side had all these famous Hollywood folks. There was like 30, 40, 50, 60 people with tons of letters. They did a FOIA request, got all the letters. And again, it just goes to show you like all those letters have some effect, even if it's not well placed. And I 25 years doesn't seem like a lot to me. I actually read a couple articles. I'm like, we all know that I always heard it was half, like whatever you got, you're serving half. Yeah. And it sounds like now maybe a Fed crime is different, but it sounds like they were saying if he's good and does all these things right, it'd be like 18 years or something like that. So it'd be 3/4, if you will.
Yeah, the tough part on that is that he will be able to get back out, you know what I mean, based on his age. And it's like, so he does kind of get that redemption potential, second chance in life with that. And, with the amount of people, it was really the arrogance. And to me, it was really, trying to align and position yourself as this altruist, like that dichotomy was what just really unsettled me the most. It's like you're sitting there in your Bahamian, little compound, but yet acting like you're so pure and you're just out there to give it back to the people while you're scamming people. So yeah, I agree. I would love to have seen a longer one, but I'm just so happy that it didn't go the other way of him getting like totally taken care of by feds or whatever, and like, hey, he's just going to go away for 18 months and then we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I guess I didn't even think that, on Poly Market, I think the guess was like, it was pretty even between 20 to 30 years, 30 to 40, and 40 to 50. I think 20 to 40, I think, was the over under. So I guess it fell within there. If it was less, yeah, that would be a bummer. I guess the other part is like, I don't know how punitive I want to be. Like, does it benefit me to have him behind bars? He's obviously not a threat to humanity. He's not a murderer or anything, but he screwed and probably bankrupted a lot of people and screwed a lot of people and stole their money. So he does deserve to go in. I guess the other piece is I saw that he was like, he's going to have to give up like $11 billion. I mean, I guess for me, I just hope he gets out with no money, like he has to be taken. And I hope his parents don't have like any illicit funds from there. I mean, he screwed people over. Like he broke the law in countless ways, all the things he was tried for, and probably a bunch of other smaller ones and repetitive things that he wasn't. Like at some point, if he's got a stash somewhere and can just get out, I mean, obviously 18 years, like what is he, 25 years old or whatever, or maybe he's 30 now. So he'll be 50 years old. Right. And, that's still a lot of life to live. I mean, yeah, being in jail for 20 years, like I wouldn't wish that on anybody, but at the same time, like as long as he gets out and actually has to like work or do something.
Yeah.
Because remember, he could probably read a book. Like I hope he doesn't have any money. Screw that guy. Yeah, he has so many people over.
Yeah, it's kind of like how you just, and I don't know how relevant it is, but like I still feel bad for like I think it's the Perlman family that has to see like OJ Simpson playing golf, and living his life, like, oh, I'm living Vegas. I got my whole setup and I'm on Twitter and da. It's like, dude, you shouldn't be able to kind of rub that in the victims' families' faces, So yeah, I don't want to see him coming out and I'd like to see him. I'd love to, see him kind of have to take more of the, work your way back up sort of job structure and everything instead of just kind of laying back.
Yeah. So I guess there's going to be 18 years to figure that out. Because remember, too, the guy could honestly write a book and probably would do well or agree to do a documentary. But I guess getting that again, like even 10 years, that's it's 3,600 and whatever days. Like that's a long time. So double that for 20 years, 7,200 days. That's a lot of days you're spending in jail and a lot of your healthiest years to be behind bars. So I don't know if he gets internet in jail. I don't know if you do, but it'll be interesting to see how this all goes. I know they're appealing it. Of course, everything always gets appealed. I don't know what's going to come of it next, but I assume at least the first flag is planted and everything's now based on that. I don't see how they could get more leniency. He's already been proven guilty on so many things. So
yeah, I don't think there's much appeal on that, but I'm not a lawyer. So what else do we want to get into today? Do you want to look at look at any of these inflows and just hit on that? Or is it kind of the same story? I mean, it's kind of big, and as I say, like when I left, I was like locked out of being able to buy more because I was in another country and I didn't have it set up as I should have, but there was a dip and, I'm kind of getting FOMO. I'm getting like dip FOMO now because I still believe the fundamentals that we've been talking about for past X number of weeks or months is there's a massive supply short coming or a supply shortage coming on specifically Bitcoin. So when I see those dips, like I want to make sure that I can at least have a little bit of tasters on those because we've already seen as of, I don't know, right now we're probably right around 70 again. So you got to look at those as ways to kind of stock up when you can.
Yeah. What are we at right now? We're at 69.4. So yeah, it's the amount flowing in. So remember we had full 5 days. I don't know if that was actually 5 calendar days, but it was certainly 5 days in a row of negatives, big negatives, negative 326. And most of that, it was certainly slowing down of the big 11, but really it was GBTC just hemorrhaging. Yeah. And I know one bankruptcy, they took out like 2 billion. So it all kind of adds up and makes sense. But the first full day we have from yesterday, we're back up to 182 million, 243 million. 2 days ago, what day is today? Today's Friday. So Wednesday was 243 million and 418 million Tuesday. And then it was basically a wash on Monday. So Yeah, I guess this was a first. So that was a full week of just negative. But
Red.
GBTC
Yeah.
can't leak forever. Most of these holders are going to be long term. So I guess for me, it just keeps signifying buying signals. We're not at a, we've hit a new all time high, but, we're pre halvening, which this always happens generally after the halving. And all time highs for 4 cycles happen generally, as we talked about Brennan last week, like 5, 6, 7 months after the halving. But I think all bets are off now with so much money just waiting for infrastructure to be set up and just putting 1 or 2% in there. And they're probably not trading in and out of this. They're just putting it there, including last week. I know you were out. Japan has 1.4 trillion. They're just starting to look at if Bitcoin ETFs and just investing in Bitcoin with part of the funds makes sense. I know, what was it, Arizona? So I mean, big names are doing that. We know that El Salvador and Bukele owns more than had originally been anticipated. We know that Qatar is looking at it, probably has already bought some speculate that Mr. BTC, that's a nickname they
Yeah.
gave, someone buying 100 Bitcoin a day was them. So you're getting these sovereign countries starting to put money there. The US debt, I believe, are we at 32 trillion? So there's so many things going that are weighted towards this. Again, I know, broken record, but it just, to me, seems like buckle up and just wait for takeoff. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, obviously today's the last business day of the quarter, right? And I don't know, maybe, some of the people that manage funds and utilize the ETF, maybe they took some quarterly ups, because what was it when the ETF launched? I forget. Wasn't it at like 48 or,
Yeah, it had gone up all the way up to like 48, 49, and then there was a bunch of people who I think were kind of playing the market, and hats off to them. They
yeah.
played it perfectly because the demand, I thought, and we thought, and probably a lot of people, the floodgates are going to open. It's going to go straight to 240,000, and it did, and it went back down to 4. It might have even clipped the 30s again, but we'll call
Yeah, I think it did.
but if it did, it was like for an hour. So I think it stayed at the 41, 42 for like a week or two. Then, Vanguard kicked. Basically, I left Vanguard. It took me 10 days to get my money over. And by then, it was actually down in the 41, 42. So I didn't go all in down there, but I was able to get some down there. So I got them screwing me was actually lucky. So yeah, so it's ebbed and flowed. And now, broken all new time high at 74. And now I think we just see how it plays out with the halvening. That, like, what I would love to map out where each ETF is getting their Bitcoin. Are they directly with miners? Is it Coinbase intermediating directly through miners? It's actually a pretty interesting
Yeah.
question to ask.
Yeah, I'm gonna write that note. But if I'm just saying, if you look at it from now, we do have, TradFi. I hate saying that word, but we have kind of those guys. We have those guys in play, and if they bought it day one or early, and then they're looking at the end of the quarter at hanging out north of 70 or around there, maybe we just got to get used to some of those things happening on different kind of periods of time than when it was just holders and people that saw the light earlier than the traditional folks. So it's really encouraging to me that it's already back up. We didn't see any of the panic. And just to put a bow on the SBF story, like, no news for as long as it has is such good news. Like, you got to kind of remember the PTSD and the trauma that was going on with the SBF failure and with, Terra Luna and, that whole flush out. And that was so freaking painful to be a part of. And you really felt like, you just felt like, fight or flight at those times, like any moment, like,
Right.
what's the next shoe? And they kept coming and they kept coming. And I just think that going through the whole process of getting, SEC approval and, looking at the pending approval for potential other ETFs, like I just really feel steadier in my belief because I haven't seen, massive bad actors just shake the whole thing up. We've talked about some of the inherent grift when you're, looking at things that go up and down and markets and stuff like that. But we just haven't seen like massive franchises, get taken down. And that's been pretty reassuring, I think, for myself as a long-term investor and believer in the space.
Yeah, and don't kid yourself. The grift is that the second we hit this new bull, I was amazed at how quickly they set up camp to extract from whoever they possibly could. So will there be, I think the fallout generally is with just the pure grift. Like they were supposed to be this custodian, right? Like a Coinbase or a Kraken, and they simply were stealing money from the borrowers. And that's what you would expect the SEC to protect from. It's like they were in bed with SBF because of the connections, we think, allegedly. And they went after, was it J-Lo? They went after whoever that celebrity was, like a couple token, like, hey, celebrities don't do this. But they basically ignored where all the grift is, and remember the ETH Foundation right now is under, or is the what's Joe?
No, I think you're right. You're right.
Is it the ETH Foundation? They're we don't know for what, but if you've been following Truth Labs, he's been posting a lot of stuff that ETH or the origins of ETH is a little sketchier, more sketchy than people would want to know. But here's the other side of the shoe. Larry Fink was basically like, not that we want ETH, nor should it be classified as a security, but if it is, there could still be an ETF because ETFs can hold securities. So it's like, another.
And what's the biggest lesson learned from the Bitcoin ETF is that Larry Fink gets what he wants. And when he sets that out, he can tip the scales. So if he's saying it doesn't matter, that's kind of bullish, right?
Yeah, I think if you look at Polymarket, though, the odds of the ETH ETF being approved by May are, the bet now is, I think, down to, let's look at this. I think it's like 10%. So it's super low. It was as high. It was 60-70% back in January to be approved by May. But, obviously now that the SEC is doing this investigation, they're going to kick that can as long as they can. It sounds like the temperature is that it's inevitable, but it's probably not going to be May.
I recall months ago that, people were saying May was kind of would be really, bullish, but I thought it was more like August was when it kind of comes down to a more significant deadline.
Right. So here's like the map from like early January. It goes above 50, just down to like 14%. So this is not the be all end all, but it certainly gives you the temperature. And now we're, April 1st is Monday. So we're just running out of room for that to happen. But, again, with ETH, like I can't get it out of my head, like how much of Layer 2s are rolling down to ETH. I almost wish that all L2s rolled to ETH. That was almost a prerequisite, but maybe that's not a realistic thing and it could be spun off. I don't know, but it seems to me like that would have been a no-brainer because that, for a deflationary asset that I can stake and validate and get more as it's interest on mine while it's deflating as a currency, was a pretty good narrative. And now I'm like, well, if more and more goes to L2s, look at Azuki. They're going to, was it Arbitrum? And, anime, I guess there's an anime token and they're that's going to be the home for all anime. I heard on ones along with that and another big name, but, just maybe an old project that doesn't have a lot of eyes on it anymore, just screaming for attention. But again, they are going to layer 2s because layer 1's getting too expensive on ETH. So ETH is in this weird crabby thing, and now I kind of understand why.
Yeah, and I remember, Polygon and Matic, and they had like supposed to have like the best biz dev, back in the day, and they were doing all these global sponsorships with all these huge brands, and it was like, I don't know if they just had good kind of narrative on that or marketing on that, but when you get down to these different tokens for the L2s, I constantly see like, oh, we'll be awarding musicians with more OP tokens and all that. So having these L2s kind of have a ton of, tokens floating out there, and then not having it support the native or not utilizing ETH, it kind of feels like, I don't know if that was always kind of the pure plan that I envisioned on, kind of the execution of the L2. So now I don't know what I think of, holding a bunch of Matic or Optimism, and, does drive me more towards the core asset, and, a little less on, oh, well, it's going to be, it'll be so important, or you'll see so much upside on some of those other ones. So I'm going to have to do a little bit more kind of investigating and soul searching on like, do I really believe, and that goes back to the different parts of the cycle, right? Like, so when I got in, everyone was talking about, Polygon and this or that, or, you got to get involved with them. But I haven't seen as much in terms of, news or developments on that front. And I wonder, is it just like, and it kind of leads me to a question of Ink and Azuki and, kind of Matic and base. And it's like, you have these kind of incumbent players, for lack of a better term. Azuki, certainly rode the kind of street version, streetwear and street cred for Ethereum when they came out, and they had the whole, ties with the Eastern culture, and just so many dynamic thoughts from that perspective. And you almost wonder, is like an Ink able to sit back, take notes, kind of see what works, what kind of clicks, and then execute a totally clean game plan with a new drop, and have it roll out that way? So is it almost like the next gen is able to learn the lessons from the pioneers, and then are those the ones that make more sense to really be excited about as we sit down and enter this next phase?
Yeah, I think the lessons are, I mean, Inc. has stated very clearly there is no utility here. And on Bitcoin, obviously, utility, I think utility is a loaded word. And I think getting into things with the utility, you're buying into, it's like buying Nvidia. Nvidia has a lock on right now on GPUs and stuff like that, and AI, and obviously crypto's involved too. But they're, I don't know what their PE is right now, but the price to future earnings has got to be 80, 90. It's probably got to be the highest of any company out there right now. And maybe they'll live up to it, but you're betting on a very distant future of crazy earnings. And but I think there's just not a lot of places to put your money. So Inc. has very specifically said that they are not, there is no utility, but you bring up Ink and Azuki, like, it's funny how these just keep coming up in the same sentence over and over. It could be the nail in the coffin for Azuki, or Azuki. I mean, what Azuki does have going for it is there is still a very loyal follower base. Now, I'm sure all the Spirit DAO is, they got free ink mints and they're minting, and I'm sure a couple of them are gobbling up a bunch saying like, all the attention's over on Bitcoin. Now, remember when Node Monks had a huge run, and it feels like every Bored Ape on our timeline and Mutant Ape went and bought one at the peak, and now it's down. It's not down a ton. It went from 0.7 or whatever to 0.5, but it still went down. So now, with Azuki at 5 ETH and Ink as a brand new mint for, now it's going for 0.07, whatever. I should probably do the math quicker. So what do we figure? 0.1 is 7,000. So 0.01 is 700. So the mint was like $400. And now it's, so what do we say? 0.1 is 7,700. So it's about $5,000 per already.
Yeah, just under.
Which is pretty good. So basically it's 1.8 ETH, right? Or whatever that comes out to be. So kind of good to think about it in those terms. So probably has a lot of room to run. But again, any utility to me is not worth it. But if they do something cool, it's a pleasant surprise, right?
See, the thing that I would say though that kind of ties into that is, what if Azuki's IP or Pudgy's or, one of these, more Ethereum centric, what if it only takes one of those to reverse engineer this to a degree? And what I mean is not playing for the people already in the space, but you're bringing people to the space because the IP transcends and gets people to want to bridge and become involved. And the way for them to get involved is to, move into and enter the crypto ecosystem. So maybe it can onboard people because they're such fans of the IP and the product that it brings people in. And when you bring in mainstream or something clicks from a cultural level, that can transcend the people that were already in the space, because all of a sudden there could be such a new wave of people coming in that there is a chance that could happen. And that would be pretty interesting, because we haven't seen really that breakthrough cultural moment where it's like everybody wants to get in or be a part of this because something is so cool that they'll jump through different hoops to be able to enter and be involved.
Yeah, I guess Pudgy was the closest to do it, but really they just sold a bunch of plushies in Walmart. I think it was a pretty successful launch, and it sounds like the founder is pretty smart. I never got a Pudgy, but I happy that they did well. I think since it has come down quite considerably too. I don't think it's staying up in the 20 ETH range, but I don't know. It's a good question.
But I'm just saying that's the one thing, right? Like,
right.
If you
but
can
but remember, so if you're going to onboard new people, right, unless they already had a big bag of ETH in the early days, like, who's going to spend? Because remember, an Azuki is still 5 times 35, so it's like $17,000 or $18,000 for the base one. We knew Azuki when it was way higher, so it feels cheap. But if you just look at it from, if you look at it from normie land, when you're coming in with cash, like, who's going to drop $16,000, $17,000? Like, even if they love the Azuki anime, they can watch the Azuki anime for free. They could be super into it. Now, you might get some eclectic folks who have a lot of money who get into this, and maybe there's a lot more degen people out there who have a ton of cash. But the more something costs, the more rarefied that air gets, and the less buyers you have. Like, it's hard to be a mainstream Web 2 Normieville brand. Like, let's say ideally, like Cowboy Bebop or whatever anime show, for us back in the day, it was like Speed Racer. Let's say they just make something that is the coolest, they do like a half-hour show or whatever, and it just crosses the chasm. It goes on a Netflix or Prime or whatever, and they just kill it. It's a great story and they have a great foundation. That would be a home run, right? And the holders would certainly feel vindicated. But what do they get? Like, what do they get? The only benefit you can get is more drops, which we've seen over and over again, dilutes the collection, right? So what do you actually get if you don't have new buyers coming in? Like, there was a period where a lot of Bored Apes and Mutant Apes, they might have had the Bored or Mutant Apes on their timeline, but they were gobbling up Azuki too. And, you got some of these whales who are owning 10 to 50, 60, 70 of these things. I mean, just insane amounts. Like, it doesn't sound like much, but then when you're like, okay, top 50 holders, let's say the average from the top guy to the bottom guy hold like 20 each, so there's 1,000. There's like 10% of the collection right there. At some point you just don't have enough buyers, and that's to me why the utility. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying now it doesn't align. Normies are not going to come in and spend 15 to 20, and as the demand goes up, $30,000 or $40,000. Like, it's new people are probably cycling into the space, but new people with a lot of money who can afford that, the number goes down exponentially. unless someone starts small, does some smart trades, gets in this over here, and then dreams to have an Azuki and ladders up to it. But the more we go to Ordinals, the more Azuki's kind of out of the limelight, the more they go to L2 stuff, which, I mean, have you had a smooth transition from an L1 to an L2 and back where it felt like it was the same chain? No. And I think, I think one of the other points, I think one of the central points that you just kind of touched on and we've talked about a little bit, or we've danced around is, like we talked about like, Uniswap or, this or that. And it's like, they're not even able to technically give percents of whatever it is back to the holders. So even if Azuki, put out a movie and it made, hundreds of millions of dollars, like, I don't think legally that they could then, have any of that cascade down to a holder. So that's kind of a weird and
point.
Think about, they have kind of like a perverted incentive model. It's probably the wrong word, but their incentive model, remember, they already made that big, whatever it was, 42 million on the elemental drop last summer. So it's almost been a year now. I don't know how quickly they burn through cash. I don't know how big their team is or how big their offices are, but they, I'm sure they all took a nice little bonus from that. If I had a company, I would have, but then they started planning the anime. Like they were just a day late, dollar short, but now, with all the blur farming, remember they were still getting 0.5%. And when I did all those numbers, I probably underestimated what they're still getting. There's probably on that trading there, it's something, it's probably enough to pay the rent and do a lot of stuff, but it's not enough just to do crazy anime here. So they're taking the past revenues, presumably they're spending more than they're making monthly now. And now, that partnership with, was it Arbitrum? It probably got, it was Arbitrum, right? So obviously Arbitrum has, there's like a centralized team there who probably went to Azuki. We saw Location TBA post all this stuff about like why it was the right chain. And I'm sure he did have a say, and I'm sure they looked at all the chains for L2 to figure out where anime belongs. But none of them, Zagabond or any of them, have really answered the question of like, what does anime have to do with a layer 2 anyway? Are the videos going to be on there? Is the token to the, like, it's all gobbledygook to me. Like, what are you actually proposing? And to me, it sounds like,
so does it kind of seem like the token is another dilution play?
The anime token? I mean, it's certainly token season, so they can't all make it. And really at the end of the day, taking this whole meme coin thing out of it, like, I'm amazed at how meme coins, some of them have been resilient. I don't think the Bored Ape token has, I assume that's way down. I don't follow it and I don't pretend to, but I assume it's way down from its peaks. I don't hear anything in the timeline. Nobody's talking about it. So is this anime token, like, you again, if you are going to do that on the ETH side, you're probably super late. People might get into it and they might have their finger on the pulse, but I think Azuki got pushed into a corner because everyone was pissed at them for launching this stuff. They took in a bunch of money and now they have to deliver. They're kind of stuck in the ETH ecosystem. So they're going L2. A lot of the focus right now shifted. I mean, we just saw by the numbers, half is on Ordinals. Ethereum's just slightly less than half. So they lost half immediately. I think it's seemingly to us, it seems like they've lost 90% of the attention because our attention is there and we're biased to our own experiences. But I mean, what is that token? It's just another token. What does it mean? I mean,
and
I don't know.
Well, I think the timing of the announcement, bears notice, right? Because it was literally like 24 hours or so before ink mints. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's kind of just my, what I just keep looking at. It's like, how I know there's great teams on, some of the legacy ones, but are we just going to start having to realize that some of these pre-existing, projects that did great, there's newer versions coming out that may just make have a little bit more relevance, and they're
or
not.
or just a new shiny object, right?
Yeah, no,
I
because
mean,
that's all it really takes. Like, look at Magic E. I mean, it's all about shiny objects, right? So, yeah, I guess you've been saying the no utility, and maybe we should look at, do a post or do something just about like the top lessons learned from kind of the last, ETH NFT, kind of launch, and see how some of those lessons are incorporated into the strategies of these newer projects.
no, that's a great call. Definitely play around. I'll show you how, but play around with those the X articles, because it allows you to lay stuff out really simply. I did a 2,500 word one on all the different runes tokens, and 3 days later, people are like, dude, I can't read it all. I'm like, it was literally, first it was just token gated to premium plus members, so only they could see the whole thing. But then they literally replaced the real one with the 500 word cutoff one, and the real one, the 2,500 word one that did pictures for each one so you could identify. It was just gone. And my second version of that was like, I'm not redoing that, because it took me hours to research that, but the chart is the most important thing, and this is what you need to look at. So for anyone on there, I think I have it pinned, but just look at the Blutoshi and the runes things, and I just highlight in bold the coins that I like. I can show you right here. Yeah, it's this right here. So V2 share. Yeah, so it's this article, and it has all the different runes. I got Gob in there, the latest one. I got runes as fuck here. I even put Derp in there, but you got Runestone, and obviously you have Arsic, and just what you need to do for all of these. Some of them you need to move, some of them you don't. But just, take a look at it. And for everyone out there, feel free, if you post the comments, we can actually, through our system here, we can see your comments and we can answer any questions if you want. Disc right now, we've got 111 listeners, which is awesome. We love doing this, but we just talk about whatever really is on our mind, and we're both on vacation. So to us, this is kind of an important, going up 10,000 or 30,000 feet to look at again just what it is we're all doing and what culture we're creating. And I think good people tend to gravitate towards other good people, but like I said, what always worries me about this space is the influencers and what the narrative's trying to do. But I guess Disco, if I go back to our regularly scheduled program, like with Azuki, I hope they can hit a home run, but I don't even know if the attention's not there and people don't care. Like, think about it. A lot of people like me left Azuki. If they came out with a pilot show or like little shorts with some world-renowned director, I would watch it, and then I would be interested. Obviously, because we've been scrutinizing, I would be there to scrutinize it both positively and negatively, but that doesn't mean I'm going to go back and buy another Azuki. I probably, like, if anything, I've got one left, more for nostalgia than anything. I'm either going to burn it and just have it be on the Ordinals blockchain as a sub 5K, or I'll sell it, or maybe I'll hold it just so you and I, if we're at NFT New York next year, we're not going this year, but or for Art Basel and they have a party, they throw good parties, we can go to the party, but if they have killer anime, or if that anime token does really well and then on one and everyone gets in there, I don't know, maybe because I pulled myself away from it once I did the elementals, and our first show together it was almost like a palate cleanser. Like, this was a good era of the Azuki era and the peak of ETH and NFTs and CryptoPunks and all that. But for me, at least in my journey, that was the end of an era. And after the elementals, I did the research, but I had obviously my decision based on the numbers and how much money they took in and how little they've done since, except for show leaderboards for who holds the most Azuki and who has the most spirit Azuki. Like, to me, that's just like, it's vanity. You're trying to see your name on a leaderboard that is meaningless, right? So I'll watch it, but it won't make me go buy more. And that's why I'm kind of bearish on the whole collection and really on the utility in general.
But then what makes you more bullish or excited about ink because it's not promising anything, correct? So
Mhm.
is it just that you want to vibe with the art and collect and own that, or is it that you think that there'll be like, what's the motivator? All that being said about, maybe I'll hold that Azuki for, you mentioned the 3 different reasons to burn or use as a, kind of a ticket to a party or nostalgia. With the new crop of, some of these Ordinals projects, like what is the differentiator that makes it more compelling to buy into ink as opposed to, what we were talking about with the Zuki? Like, what's the difference?
I think a big part of minting ink is the price was right. I mean, it's
Yeah.
0.0058. I think that was what, like $300 or $400 in Bitcoin, right? So the price
Right.
was right. I did like the art. There are a lot of community members who I've gotten to know. None super close, like in my inner circle, but a lot I've gotten to know over the years, and I like them.
Mm-hmm.
I like the way that they handled the launch. I thought it was like when they said point one, and a lot of people are like, what, point one? And people are like, watch the video. And it counted down to 0.0058. Like, I like the ink for the people. So yeah, I guess I'm
Yeah.
buying into a little of the, and remember, they said no utility. So my risk to get that one, I didn't sweep the floor of 50. I'm kind of, I don't want to say I'm past that phase where I am, because maybe there is a collection where I'd be like, oh, I'm getting like 40 of these things, but I don't know, because Bitcoin, we all see Bitcoin doubling, tripling, quadrupling in the next cycle at least. To me, the incentive to spend in an ecosystem where the underlying asset, what we're kind of calling the core monetary or layer 0 of financial asset of the world, like there's way less incentive to buy, but that's what motivated me. And what motivated me to buy Azuki, it was the first successful mint I had where I got to flip some Azuki and see some upside and make some money. But I love the art. I've only seen samples of inked. I suspect a lot of them will be super cool, and some of them will be more common or plain, and but I knew my risk was almost zero because they weren't secondary. I knew they had enough buzz where it wasn't going to go for 0.0058. So my risk was low. They didn't try, they weren't greedy. They allowed for the upside to be with the holder. They made what did I say? $4 million. That to me seems, if I'm going to be honest, a little low, almost too reasonable.
It's
But
modest.
it's
Modest.
super modest. Like if there's 4 founders and they might reinvest, they're probably going to do some stuff. So let's say each of them got $1 million. Like that's pretty cool. The artists, they put their work in, and I think that's fair. If there's a much huger team, which I'm sure there are, like with the people that they, paid to help promote, like I'm sure it gets split up even more. But how cool is that? Like, because then it can take off a life of its own. And, that's what Node Monks did a good job with too. They did the Dutch auction, and the final price was certainly way more than that, but I would think it was 0.02. And obviously, if you look back, like that was super reasonable and super cool. And I know you want me to go there, so I will, but OMB, love the art, love everything. And, we got allow lists for that. And I was very honored to, and I still love the art. And I still at some point may pick one up. But when I saw how many people got the allow list, when I saw the allow list price, and it is a much smaller, it's not a 10K collection. That was 3,000 and there already had been 2,000 existing. But that was, to me, that was a much higher price. So it was a 0.2 or 0.3. I think it was 0.29, I think it was. So that's,
Yeah, it's 0.29.
Yeah, so that's at the time it was $22,000. And to me that felt a little high because that doesn't give a ton of upside. And I know they're like, well, screw you, don't flip. And if I get it, I would buy it and hold it for a while. Like I'd probably want to get, like, because my name's Blutoshi, I guess I'd probably want a blue eyes anyway, which is the second. The second said it was red eyes, then blue, then green, then orange. But that's why I ended up actually not minting, because I was like, if I don't get one, that I don't like anyway, like that I'm just going to have to flip it. And I could have flipped it easily for 0.1 easily because or more if I'd waited. It went in the 0.404s. Sorry, the 0.4s, but I didn't need to flip. Like I'm not a flipper. I'm a buy and holder. Thus the disco.hodl name. I'm in the same boat as you, but I wish him the best, but Inc, I thought, like, if it's more affordable for more people, I think that's a lot easier way to build a community. And OMB was more OG. They're building more of an exclusive space, and they're kind of like, if you don't get it, I can't help you. There's a video that you and I just watched before the show about like kind of the next phase, and you don't even know what's coming. But, that again starts to get into teasing for what?
Yeah, there we go. The utility.
Utility, right? So yeah. I don't, in a lot of chats I saw, like I love OMBs, and I love a lot of people. I love a lot of the takes there because a lot of time they're brash, they're honest, and they don't pull punches. And I think the space needs to see that. But a lot of the stuff I saw them posting about their own OMB was like, you don't know what's coming, like only, I don't want to say they said like only a certain few know, but whatever it was like, if you're in that chat, it was beyond alpha in the Discord. And, you and I are older. I don't have time to be in all these Discords to try and tease out the alpha and tease out what's more kind of pumponomics and more I don't say propaganda, is that the right word? But what's tease that out from what actually like might be kind of a cool utility. But again, utility to me can only go in one direction. If we go 20 years out, I try and look like what's got a shot of being a representation of this super cool space that we're in that nobody really knows about. I still think it's like the zeitgeist and the epicenter of what can be done with coding and technology and bringing artists and collectors and dare I say influencers and project leads and founders together in a very cool, possibly in some ways unhealthy, but possibly in other ways, this beautiful space if you play the game and again, know what kind of collector you are. That's disco.hodl, right? Or disco hodl.
Yeah, just to remind myself, like that's where I'm coming from. But welcome to Decentral Lens.
Oops.
We're lifelong.
I clicked the wrong button, my bad.
But I also, like, with the OMB, like I will say, like, we were both fanboying out on the art, on the mint day. Like, so it's powerful, and it definitely has an incredible, it's got a pull, and I just, for me, when I look at stuff like it's just different, looking at, like, I can understand. I mean, do you consider runes the utility for ARSIC? Because for me, it's like, I'm not getting that for the art, but I'm getting it for, the mining of the runes and what that could lead to. So it's kind of like a different subclass of ordinals. If you kind of look at the, the charts on Magic Eden, you kind of have those that are, they're not necessarily, they have art, and I'm not disrespecting that, but you're not getting it strictly for that. You're getting it for, right, I guess, the utility of the upside of the mining, correct?
Of the runes, yeah. So you're right. Yeah. So there's a perfect example. Am I being hypocritical? Yeah, probably. ARSIC captured all of our attention, being the first. Well, the Runes X and one. There was one other, but I thought Runes X came out of the gate very spammy, and it was all like retweet this and like no, not doing any of that crap. And like they actually had to change their game because ARSIC got all the traction, and then the ones that followed ARSIC, like Runes Mania, Rune Guardians, and now Gob and all these other ones, like kind of stole their thunder. Now, I don't know if you got airdropped that crypt or scroll or whatever. I haven't done anything with them, but I started getting airdropped that stuff because they realized like, oh, we can't just make this exclusive to people who retweet. We've got to broaden this out, because if you don't get the adoption, you don't get the adoption. So yeah, I guess the combination of most of them I got, I think 5 or 6 airdropped to me, R6 that is. They were the first ones where we're all like, first, the first couple of days, remember, was like, what's this? What's this? What's this? And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, this is cool. Then they were cryptic and they started kind of explaining it. And then they had the description and you had to learn about, which we still don't know about, rarity, clarity, and all these things. And today they sent another cryptic one with just 4 pictures for who knows what it is. And I'm not going to try, but I haven't, I actually did sell a couple to get a Hardo Sats, but then I went back and I bought whatever I have. I think I have a couple more than what I started with. And to me, it's like, as long as you're playing a game and that the value's already gone down in half recently. So for me, I was, obviously we did all these spaces on it too. I was planning on holding through the pooling, the lottery tickets and because there's still, I think, like 55 to 60% not allocated. But again, is this just a meme coin, or are they building a DEX and something much bigger to kind of harness this entire ecosystem? They're not the only ones. I think RuneX actually has a kind of a Uniswap type thing. So they are probably there working on it. I know there's a couple others building dexes for runes. So I think everybody agrees that some of them, at least temporarily, are going to absolutely moon in full send. And yeah, I guess for me, I'm willing to take a risk. This is one of those where with the risk reward, like let's say I had 10 and when they were at 0.1, I could have made a full Bitcoin and cashed out early and not mined many runes. To me, it was almost like I'd rather lose out on that potential to do possibly far more after, even if I give it a 20% chance of RSIC being the de facto top 2 or 3 where it has $1 billion or multi-billion-dollar valuation. I guess it's a risk at this stage in my degen career that I'm willing to take.
And again, though, it's part of the game, and the white paper was, compelling and fascinating when that came out, but it's almost part of the contract that you're involved because you're getting these mined runes, that you can get something out of it. Whereas when we were talking a bit ago about Azuki, like say they put out the anime breakthrough hit or whatever, you're not like, well, I have this amount of this to claim. So it's almost like a more pure relationship and an upfront contract. Like, well, you know what? You will stand to benefit if RSIC runes become valuable because you'll hold X amount based on what you've done with the gamification prior to that. So there's a purity, I guess, in that relationship. Yes, you have to, gamble, so to speak, on it delivering and being one that has value, but it's a roadmap that includes the upside, whereas kind of the earlier generation of the ETH NFTs, it was an implied, upside, but it was really only based on if your PFP goes up in value, which
you either flip or sell it. Yeah, you make a very good point, and I appreciate you making that distinction, because Azuki, the team, they actually were anonymous except for the designer or the artist. I can't remember his name right now, but and then Zagabond was actually doxxed. So that is a doxed team who had a little bit of a sketchy history. They didn't do anything too terrible in my mind, but they cannot pass the value onto you by splitting the proceeds. Like when they were getting those royalties, that's why Yuga and Azuki were so hell-bent on keeping the royalties, because of course you would, because you don't have to do, once you have the art, you don't have to do anything but just people keep trading and just kind of stay in the limelight. And remember, like Zagabond would come and be mysterious and make, he'd always make these just mysterious comments, and like, sorry, dude, those days are done. Whereas with runes, RSIC holds, that team holds 10% of the entire collection. They haven't moved one, they haven't sold one, so they have skin in the game. But remember, they haven't made unless there's Magic Eden, unless they get teeny little kickbacks, I think Magic Eden gets 2.5%. I don't think any of the artists or the creators get anything back. So we're all going to get the runes. So I guess it's more of is it all Ponzi? Maybe, sure. But is it decentralized and distributed widely where the participants all get it to see where it goes? Yes. And I appreciate making that distinction because I focus just solely on that one angle of it. It's a risk I was willing to take, but you're right. There are differentiators that I guess I hadn't put into words until you so eloquently did so. So yeah, I appreciate it. Whereas Azuki and Yuga can't really, what value, what is Yuga?
How does it benefit you as a holder as opposed, you know what I mean? Like that's the difference, right?
Right. So what do you have left? What do they have left in the tank to give? Azuki can't dilute the collection again. They can go anime token, but again, are the eyes going to come back? Maybe temporarily. Some people might play the game and try and flip it, but why would I need an anime token to do anime? Like they should have gone in this direction but they should have again done the guardrails for the whole story because all the fans were already creating cool art in pictures and getting things commissioned by so many great artists out there. But now
that was pretty special. You know what I mean? Like you had a community that was going unprompted out of their way to create these really pretty dope derivatives and come up with storylines and, all this stuff. So you had and to me, that was when we first did the first show, that was what was so bullish in my mind was, it inspired all these people to really kind of build on their own and come up with this stuff. And that was where I was like, dude, that's worth something, like that's pretty cool. And I don't know if I've seen that sort of spirit in many other communities, since then. Like that was kind of a special little moment in time. And, you had everybody was just so proud to create and share what they're creating based on this. So it really did capture imagination. So that was remarkable, especially going to that party, just seeing how geeked up people were just to show what they've done and what they've built. And it was really a creative and imaginative time.
Yeah, it really was. And it also goes to show you that little, obviously you can't organize, well, I said 10,000 people, really 5,000 people, because I think the average holder had like 2, but that's still a lot of people. Think about you and I were just flies on the wall there. And we met the people that I had met over the years. But of the swath of the total group, what did we meet? Like, at the party, we probably met 1% of the people there, right? So we were flies on the wall, but think about all the little pecking orders and fiefdoms that arrive from that. And it just goes to show you that, anthropologically, which I love to talk about that, like it creates this interesting ecosystem with pecking order. And obviously if you have a spirit, you're probably naturally already higher in the pecking order. You probably get the Spirit DAO invite, especially if they like the spirit you have, so they can slurp that one up into it. But and all that pecking order, you and I obviously don't, we don't care about that anymore. We just want to hang out with people we like and have, as Brendan said last week, like we're in a space where we can have really interesting conversations with people about things that normies just simply don't understand. They just don't get it. Yeah. Right. And it's like you have 2 separate lives. You talk about sports and, for guys, that's your main thing. And like, I love some sports, but I don't follow really. And I love playing them, but talking about them, like maybe a little bit on the Bears and stuff, cause it's 1 game a week. Like this is the kind of stuff I love talking about, this and, music and all the things and decentralization, which, I guess you and I have strayed from a little, but also with that music episode, you're like, yeah, you were so heavy into that. I think that's the episode probably where we did the homework. We did a deep dive on music as our second episode back in late September. And you were like, oh man, like even if we wanted it all to change, how could it,
Yeah. And I've seen, little flare-ups with some of the platforms in Web3 music platforms, and some inferences that they're implementing, tactics from the old playbooks. So I don't think that that was the wrong take. Like, I do think that the powers that be are going to figure out their way to infiltrate whatever is the next kind of side of that. And I wanted to tell you this,
but they already not going to. They already, most of them already have, right? At least the more savvy ones, and the rest have the libraries. They just, and Ticketmaster and Live Nation have the tickets and all the venues. Like, there's no, you can't run or hide. There's no shadow. It's like you're playing.
You can't go on a Web3 tour,
right? You're playing Squid Games, and eventually the big boy thing with the machine gun. Like, eventually, even if you didn't move, it's going to shoot you. You're done.
100%. So, I mean, it's hopefully they can incorporate some of the positives on it, and all that. But it's hard to be uber passionate about it from that perspective still. And you see just all the different. That's kind of the phase we're in now, right? So we had kind of the Bitcoinification of the financial, that opportunity being presented to the masses. Right. And now we're going to start kind of seeing these different developments and platforms and how things can be made better utilizing blockchain technology and, doing that. But we're going to be more tied into this, do we have to give up so much of the decentralization element of it in order for it to be absorbed into the existing powers that be? And I think that that's really going to be a very interesting thing to keep our eye on over the next 12, 18 months. Like, I think we're going to really see, okay, yeah, no, that'd be really cool to use that, but we're going to use it as Spotify, or we're going to use that and see it. Some of these things kind of get folded into these, I don't want to say Web 2, but these existing, structures and powers. And we saw that with the BlackRock of the ETF, and we see, like BlackRock and Fidelity were kind of the biggest players, and they're still the biggest players, within the funds.
Now they're the biggest players in this space. I mean, what we learned this week is that Bitcoin. Did we already say this? That BlackRock is the biggest ETF of all time after 50 trading days, and Fidelity is number 2, and ARK is like number 6 or 7. Yeah. I mean, it's just crazy here. So there's your BlackRock, IBIT. You got Fidelity, number 2. This is of all time. This is like QQQ that you see on all the college basketball ads. I don't know why they target the college kids, but they do. Because I think QQQ is like the tech one. And
it's how you can invest in tech and innovation.
There you go. Yeah. So the pitch. But I mean, it's just the fact that there's 4 of them in the top, call that 12 or 13, is just mind-blowing. Like, think of all of them combined as an industry compared to other industries. Like, it'd be like that line would be here, and the next industry, probably gold, would be it would be fractions. There's gold right there, GLD USD. So if you took all of them, it'd probably be like, if this was the marker for all of the Bitcoin, gold would probably be next. Like, here, it's so much bigger than everyone can possibly imagine. And again, we're just getting started. And it's funny, you talk about all these things, but like, one thing that's kind of got pushed to the wayside, and I'm sure there's psyops involved in this, but like, privacy used to be such a big part of Bitcoin, and it still is. You create a new address every time you receive. What's up, Nifty? Welcome. Every time you receive, you can have privacy, but like Monero and Zcash have basically become just public enemy number 1. And I could see if the governments are going to fight against anything, it's going to be in pure privacy. But more privacy is coming to the chains. But I was amazed since the last cycle before your time how quickly a lot of those things kind of went by the wayside for more mass adoption. And maybe that was some very dark room secret handshake somewhere that was like, keep it open so we can track everything, but this is the future. I don't know, but privacy should be super important, because if we're talking decentralization, that's kind of one of the cornerstones, right?
Yeah. But yeah, as I say, I think that it's going to be hard to try to remember those fundamentals and kind of those pillars that were so attractive when you first went down the rabbit hole. And as you see, mainstream and people coming in, how much of a voice or how much of a share of voice is, kind of those tenets that are so foundational to what's so compelling about actually being able to make change. So we'll see.
Yeah, for sure. So what we did a nice mosaic today of going into so many places. Like I know with the ETFs, we probably covered only a fraction of what's ever all going on, but we have we painted with the broad brush, and I think that's the most important thing. And we got the thing I love about this show and the conversations is you go from macro to kind of talk about these little things that are happening, like like OMB before we went on vacation, and now Inked is kind of the new hot one right now that's trading at 10x what it minted for, and it hasn't even revealed yet. So, and then we've kind of brought it back to the bigger kind of one. I know we've got little bankless stuff. Where should we keep going? I see Coinbase on here, but you've woven us very well all around, which I love. Like, it's very seamless. It's not like, now this section we talk about this, and brought to you by Crest,
Yeah, and we don't have any brought to you buys, which is fine. So I think that I would just ask people to, support the show in whatever way they can. If you like what you're seeing and hearing, we're not looking at this from a vanity perspective on having our faces out there. We're looking at it more as it's kind of fun to be able to go live and do this on the timelines and use that. But, I think that one of the things that we can kind of promise to everybody is that what we're going to try to do is take a look at things and be very honest with, even our kind of our feels, right? Like how we're feeling at the time. And hopefully that kind of resonates with people. We kind of started the show, a little bit trying to get back into the saddle and catching up and seeing where things were. And, we're a little bit down, but I think that, just the inspiration that the opportunities and in this space present, like, it always kind of comes around to being like, dude, there's a lot of cool stuff going on. And I think that is, where I like to focus, and just looking at, these new collections and like, I really want to see what the ink art, what the reveals are, and get into that. So like, there's just a lot of stuff that gets me really excited about this. And, I think that it's interesting to see that we're at this intersection of kind of the mainstreamification of some elements of the space, and see how that all kind of shakes out and plays out. Obviously, we're all rooting for all ships to go up. And I think that, looking at things, one of the questions I was kind of thinking about over the last week or so was like, do you need to be a maxi, or are kind of like the maxis kind of representing, some of the trouble or turbulence in the space? And I think that you really just got to figure out, what's your own path and what you want to identify with, and not really worry about, how you get categorized or where that is, because it's an outcome of your journey. And, there was something that they were saying on my trip, which was the journey is the destination. And I think that you kind of think of things from that lens and that perspective, and you're going to have a lot more joy in your life and wonder and interest. And I think that that's what I like to take away from doing the show.
Yeah, for sure. So if you want to, while you are doing the disclaimers and the broad picture stuff, which I 100% agree with, and that's, I think, what makes this so enjoyable. This is actually in their Discord. This is their sneak peek section. So already, obviously it faces the same way as Azuki. I think what the cool thing is, like, that orange background, I don't love it. And even Bitcoin punks, like, I know I've been down on those for a long time, and I don't love how they're made. The founder, I thought, was kind of a grifter. But the orange background was, that's kind of a keeper. And what I think I love about Ink is that, this guy obviously is probably a little more like a mid comment, or somewhere in the middle, right? Like, cause it's got some of the orange highlights, like even with the orange background, just look at how some of this orange stuff just completely pops. But even like, kind of the black and white or sepia tone, the girl, like with the orange background, it just really pops. I mean, as a PFP collection, like, I could see why Azuki is, I'd be panicky too, man. Like you've seen the sneak peeks. It's not like the Spirit DAO because they're still heavily invested in the success of Azuki, and that's still their number one. What will be very interesting is will Azuki start to change their PFPs to ink? I think some of them definitely will. Some of them might do it as a fun little temporary teaser. But, think about it. You do a temporary teaser and then be like, does ink follow ink? And then all of a sudden you're like, a couple old friends you haven't seen in a while from different collections, a couple new friends come in, then all of a sudden things are kind of buzzing and vibrant again. It's a new take on kind of that. I would say this is in ways, On One maybe started that trend, but Azuki took it, I think, to another level. But like that kind of bionic orange right there with the crown, that guy's pretty badass. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no doubt.
You get the laser eyes and the orange, just the orange tie, kind of like, this is for another day, people. But Disco and I are playing around with some video, and we're playing around with sepia tones and black and white instead of being in color for certain things. And this reminds me of that, how much it pops. I mean, how cool would it be if the stuff we're working on, I could just have the tie be orange, right? But we know the background will be a different color. So but
it does pop just as a highlight for sure.
100%. So getting I love the clean ones, but this one, I mean, the guy's total business dude, but he's got full on orange laser eyes. He's got the badass tattoo there. I mean, but even I assume this one's more floor, your black and whites are more in the floor, but I don't know, man. This is whereas Azuki is more of the traditional classical garb, this is almost like the modern take on it. You know what I mean? It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Do you think that it's all one artist?
I haven't done enough research to look. I don't think so, but this is all traditional PFP, with the face shape and the different mouths. They're doing it where, it's all the overlays and mixing the different overlays, which I think is fun, but it's cool. The ink and the band, it's an homage. Yeah. That's the striated, the muscles and stuff like that. Let's see if we got a bunch of new listeners just from showing the ink. I actually haven't scrolled this in a long time. I minted an ink. I can't wait to see what I get. And, I could see people this one, I think will be very popular because I think, as much as I talk about utility and stuff like that, people want to be a part of a group. And if the art is super dope and you're following other inked folks, the timeline is going to fill with PFPs changing here. I mean, how can they not? There's so many, if you have a pudgy penguin or whatever, and that was never my bag, but there's just so many that I could see flipping to this. It's fresh, it's new. All right. So there you go. You're getting cooler there. So you've got and you can already see the, just like with Azuki, the faction, the fireball factions and the Kigu, the hooded stuff, those factions. I can't remember what they're called anymore, but obviously so she is probably, she's probably the equivalent of a Spirit, right? So obviously ton of Azuki influence, but look, we talk about the black and white, so this guy's obviously probably a common. It's very black, white, and maybe we call that black, white, and gray. But then look at her, truly black and white, she's almost see-through or like a shadow. She's very simple.
Yeah, it's translucent or something.
Yeah, it just makes it pop. And then even with the Azuki elementals, you get this. So if I was Azuki, I know I say this over and over, I'd be pretty afraid, and they're offering no utility, but you don't, and remember, just because you say there's no utility, they could do stuff in the future. It's just, there's no promise of it, which to me, yeah. And if you do something, it's because it made sense. You could do a free mint later for people if you wanted to give back or whatever, or a really cheap one to have companions, as long as it doesn't dilute the main collection. I mean, look at this dude. There's going to be some happy people And I haven't even looked. I have no idea when this reveals. They probably wanted to get through yesterday, make sure everyone, some people were complaining they had an allow list spot and didn't get it, So we're doing, it's funny. We're doing our scroller, maybe for the radio show,
cool.
I'll cut this section out because we're just like, that's cool. Oh yeah, that's cool. People will be like,
Well, I
wow,
like that one.
your podcast really has gotten better. If you can't see it, you can't see it, right? So we'll figure out where to cut. But like now, look at all the orange, like, and then you get the contrast, like kind of a common one, but then you get the gray background, like that's pretty badass. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah,
now I'm freaking refreshed, like great. Now I'm all wound up.
Yeah, I mean, look at that dragon. Okay, so there's all the sneak peeks, and I'm sure there's a bunch more. I should scroll in there. I should figure out like when are they going to reveal? Let's just see if we can announce it before we end the show. For next trick, the minted phase 1 or purchase. However, anyone that's sold or listened can't play. Whoops, get wrecked bots and jeets. Not sure what that means. So it doesn't look like they're saying when it'll reveal yet. I'm sure people know and it's in there, but yeah, I mean, pretty damn cool. And remember, there's a lot of people. They did a really good job. I think they did like 150, 200 custom inked where, they draw. I would have loved to have got one of those. I wasn't lucky enough to get one of those, but where they draw like, they did the full on custom like the Node Monks did, which is I think was a nice touch. And you basically you're picking your ambassadors, right? And you're seeing those on the timeline, and that's kind of what helped kick it off for them. So congratulations to Ink. It was actually cool to finish this show to just wind through these, but let's which is our favorite one. I mean, there's so many badass ones. Like, I mean, hard to argue. Like, obviously, if you opened your pack of baseball cards, which one you'd want, this is probably the one you'd want. This is the one that probably could go for a couple Bitcoin would be my guess. And just so you know, remember I told you about those legacy sats that Casey was working on when he was introducing people to this, and he had the sheets of paper. These are all minted on those legacy sats. So is that the coolest thing ever? That's pretty cool, right? Because nobody's broken one of those things out, gotten the sats, and then minted on the legacy sats. I think that was a nice touch because everybody's minted on the Block 9 450k sats. Like, that's as old and as OG as you can get on minting on old sats, but going legacy, they're not older, but they're the ones Casey had pre-runes, if you will. So it's, again, just, it's not the icing. It's the icing on the cake. It's not the main narrative, but any little touches like that, I think, is cool, where you look at rare sats and what rarity means and kind of challenge it in a whole different way. Like, if I got one of these, got like these half bionic, I think I'd be pretty thrilled. Like, I'd really like one of those super rares. Like, if I minted like the equivalent of a spirit, I would be the happiest person. That'd be so awesome. But when you have one, when you buy one pack of baseball cards, you might not get the upside down George Brett 390 average Fleer from 1990.
There we are with the George Brett.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, those are cool. I'm on the page. So that's all I'll say.
No.
I'm closely watching. We'll see what happens. But just to wrap it up for everybody, this is, we do the show strictly for entertainment and our own catharsis, so to speak, and nothing should be considered financial advice. Do your own research and be careful, but enjoy the ride and enjoy the journey, and we'll see you next time.
Yep. Take care, everybody. And make sure to, like, at the beginning, Disco, we have to say this around, like, retweet this. You can ask questions you can make comments and we can see them. Like, Nifty just responded to a bunch of things to us. So appreciate you, Nifty, but we can see it and we can respond to it. So we've got to just be better at the beginning of the show, telling people, like, hey, if you have any questions or want to reroute the conversation, if it's kind of fits where we're going, we love to weave everything together, and we don't just try and present the news. We try and look at the macro, weave it in with the micro day-to-day stuff, and then kind of go in and out and have fun doing that. So with that said, everybody, take care, and we will see you next week.